Want to get better, faster at the thing you care about most? There are 5 strategies of genius that the world's best use to get exceptional results, and I'm going to share them with you and show you how you can make them your own. Welcome to the Everyday Genius Show. I'm Taryn Voget, and over the years, I have been able to deconstruct how the world's best do what they do in my Genius Lab, and I've discovered that there are 5 strategies of genius that they all use to get exceptional results. Now, people think genius is all magical and mysterious, but there is a structure and a method. And what the really cool thing is that you are already doing all of these things at whatever it is you're good at. And by the time you watch this episode to the end, you are going to realize that you are already geniusing on some level. So, what is genius? Genius is when 3 things come together. It's when someone's passion or what they love doing provides the fuel for genius. It's when they operate from great strategy, which is what we're going to talk about in this episode. And it's when someone is able to do what I call channeling, which is entering the quantum field to pull ideas, information, or inspiration through, which sounds magical, but you're already doing this too. When those 3 things come together, passion plus great strategy plus channeling, it looks to the outer world like genius. So let's do a deep dive into the strategy. So there's 5 elements of strategy. To make this episode fun, think about something that you are already good at or that you enjoy doing. And it doesn't have to be your job, although it might be. It could be cooking or communicating with kids or training dogs or designing something. It could be anything. But as you think about what you're good at, follow along in each of these 5 strategies because you're going to see how you're already doing all of these strategies and how you can take whatever it is you're doing to the next level by consciously improving each of these strategies. The first strategy of genius is operating from what I call high quality goals. And anybody who is really good at what they do is operating from very high quality goals, or what I might even call genius level goals. Now, these aren't goals like I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to make $1 million next year. They are the goals that they have when they're doing the thing, meaning what is somebody trying to achieve when they are baking or designing something or communicating or creating a piece of art, whatever it is. And these goals are often very subconscious, meaning most people aren't aware that they even have all these goals, but it's what they're trying to optimize for or trying to achieve when they do the thing. And you can think about this in your own life with whatever it is that you love doing. What are you trying to achieve when you do the thing? Now, in my Genius Lab, when I ask somebody, what are you trying to achieve or what are your goals? The first 3 or 5 usually come out pretty quickly or pretty easily, and then it gets harder and harder. And by the time goals number 20 or 25 come out, they are goals that are often buried so deeply in the subconscious that the person isn't even aware of it. But it's often when the most genius goals are revealed. Now, the interesting thing about goals is that we are always trying to achieve them. The action we take is always in support of trying to achieve the goal. So the goal itself is often subconscious, and then the action that we take is often subconscious. But when we can bring that into our conscious awareness and look at it, we can often get a lot better, a lot faster, just by noticing what it is that we're actually trying to do and then taking steps to make it even better. Now, to give you some really fun examples of my Genius Lab, and you can see what I mean by these genius level goals. I had a shaman in my Genius Lab, and one of his goals was to create an outcome to what might seem like an impossible situation or to create a miracle for a client, a healing miracle. You can imagine what he was doing in his session to try to achieve that goal. It's fascinating. But that was what I would call an incredibly high quality goal. He's trying to create a miracle for somebody that needs a miracle. So that's a high quality goal. Another very high quality goal is I deconstructed how one of the world's best communicators communicates. And when she goes into a very difficult or hard conversation, she has the most genius level goal, which is that she holds the other person in their greatness or in the best version of themselves, no matter how angry or upset or frustrated she is. Before she goes into the conversation to have a difficult conversation, she imagines this person at their best, their most beautiful self with the best qualities, and she sees them as the best version of them. You can imagine the difference in energy that conversation has when she enters into that kind of a difficult conversation, holding somebody in their greatness. I had an engineer from SpaceX in my Genius Lab, and one of his goals, and he had many, was to create a very simple solution to an incredibly complex problem. You can imagine what he's trying to do to achieve his goals. I thought it was a brilliant goal. And I could give you a lot of examples, but there are so many. When you realize that people who are good at what they do are just operating from very high quality goals or genius level goals, everything they do is in support of trying to achieve those goals. So if you want to get better at what you're doing, you can just ask somebody who's better than you, hey, when you do the thing, what are your goals? And if you can tease out their goals, you can see what they're doing that maybe you're not and how you can adopt some of their goals. So, first strategy of genius is operate from high quality goals. The second strategy of genius is using what I call mental checklists. Mental checklists are a way to get more consistent results faster at a higher level. And anybody who's been in my genius lab at some point in the conversation, and when I ask them how they do what they do, they do this with their hand. And what that is they're like running through a mental checklist of things that they're doing that's very subconscious, and they have no idea they're even doing this. And the idea of a mental checklist is obvious. You probably have one when you go to the grocery store, stuff you don't even write down that is always on your grocery list, like I need milk and eggs and broccoli or whatever. When people get really good at what they do, their checklist gets much more streamlined and much more sophisticated and higher quality. I had a wine taster in my Genius Lab, one of the top wine tasters in the world. And when he went to go and taste a wine, he was running through a mental checklist, which, by the way, he had no idea he was even doing. But when he went to go and taste a wine, he was running through this checklist of what's the fruit, non-fruit, earth, mineral, oak, acid, alcohol, tannin, finish. And he was analyzing the wine and he was running through and evaluating each item on that checklist, which allowed him to analyze a wine quickly, do it consistently, and to do it at a very high level. And that is the power of a mental checklist, is that we can do it faster, better, and at a higher level when we have a really good mental checklist. I had a kid whisperer in my genius lab, and she owned a preschool, and she was just absolutely brilliant with kids. And she could get a kid out of a tantrum, stop a tantrum in just 2 seconds flat. And what she discovered after working with thousands and thousands of kids is that when a kid was in a tantrum, there were 4 questions that she could ask that would snap the kid out of a tantrum. And she would kind of choose from that list which question would be right for the moment. And her questions were things like, are you okay? What are you wanting? What are the big tears for? Or how can I help? And she had a tone to her voice and a body posture that she would use, but she would pick from that list of one of those 4 questions to ask a kid that would kind of snap them out of the tantrum and move them into a different space. And she didn't even realize that she had these questions, but they were honed over years of experience that these 4 questions would work. And so when you think about what you're good at, what are your mental checklists? Because you probably have multiple. And if you want to get better, ask someone who's better than you at what they do and ask them what their mental checklist is, because you can glean years of experience and practice and iteration from someone else's checklist, because they're probably operating at a higher mental checklist in some cases than you are if they're better than you at what they're doing. So mental checklists are a powerful strategy of genius. The third strategy of genius is using multiple senses. And it's using the sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, sound, or feelings to get a more genius result. So when people are really good at what they do, they're activating a lot more of their senses in order to get more information to achieve a higher level. And it's obvious when you think about maybe a chef or a wine taster using multiple senses, like the sense of taste or smell. But most people who are really good at what they do are using a lot of their senses to achieve their genius level results. And I'll just give you 2 examples. I had one of the top copywriters in the world in my Genius Lab, and he writes copy for top brands like Apple and other tech companies. And when he was done writing a piece of copy, he would engage multiple senses to evaluate if the copy was good. He said he would look at it and he would say, does it look right? If I were to see this on a page, would it look right? And then, would it sound right? If I were to read this out loud, does it have the right cadence, the right words, the right rhythm? Does it sound right? And then, does it feel right? After the person reads it, is it going to evoke the feeling that I want them to have? Does it feel right? And then, based on that feeling, would they take an action? And so he was using a lot of different senses to evaluate whether his copy was going to be good. Another really brilliant one is back to the shaman, and he did something fascinating when he used a lot of senses to evaluate something. When he was tracking a client's problem, meaning they'd come to him with a problem, a healing issue that they had, what he would do is he would kind of imagine that he stepped into their body and he would then say, okay, what is this person feeling? Where do I see the problem in their body? What's the inner dialogue they're saying to themselves? So, what are they hearing that they're saying to themselves? And using all these senses to try to figure out what was really the issue going on with the client that he could then figure out and create a healing solution for. So using multiple senses to evaluate just by stepping into somebody's body like he was them and feeling and noticing and seeing all of that. It's really brilliant. So when people are good at what they do, they're engaging multiple senses. And when we're first learning, often we're not doing that. But as we get better, we can, and we can consciously engage more senses when we trying to get more genius results. So what could you do to engage more senses? The fourth strategy of genius is seeing things from multiple points of view. And without exception, bar none, anyone who's been in my genius lab who's good at what they do does this. And it is the ability to see things from multiple points of view that allows truly genius results. And in some ways, this is actually the simplest strategy to adopt if you're not already doing it. Now, what are the points of view? There's 3 points of view. The first one is, what are you seeing? It's the first person point of view. As you're looking at something or doing something, what is it that you're noticing or experiencing? First person point of view. Then there's the second person point of view. If you were to step into somebody else's shoes and become them, what are you seeing through their eyes? And it doesn't always have to be a person. Sometimes it can be an animal or even an inanimate object. But what are you seeing through something else's or somebody else's point of view as if you were them? And then there's the third person objective point of view, meaning if you were to look at it neutrally as a third person, neutral observer, what are you seeing? Now, as I say that, I can promise you that you are already doing this on multiple things in your life because it is a very intuitive thing for humans to do, which is to look at things through multiple points of view. But people who are really good at what they do are doing this, and they're doing it at a very high level. So to give you an example, I had a super connector in my Genius Lab, and this guy's absolutely brilliant at connecting people, connecting ideas, connecting things, connecting companies. He was just a brilliant connector and a super connector. And he did this incredibly well, which is that, let's say he wanted to connect two people that he thought should meet, and there would be a mutual connection point there. He would think to himself, okay, well, why do I see why these two things would connect or these two people would connect? So he'd see it through his own point of view. And then he would step into the first person he was trying to connect. He'd step in as them and he'd say, okay, well, what would be important about this connection from their point of view? Why would they matter? What would be interesting to them? And then he would do it with the other person he was trying to connect. Well, from their point of view, what would this connection be valuable for, or why would it matter to them? And so he'd get all this information. And then he would step out and he'd see it from the third person point of view, just kind of as a neutral observer, like, why would this connection matter? What could it create in the world? What would be good about it? And see it just very neutrally from a third person point of view at how it might evolve something in the world. And from there, he would then connect these people in a really brilliant way. But he was very quickly and deftly stepping into these multiple different points of view to create a connection. And people who aren't good at something are usually not adopting multiple points of view. And yet, if you can do it consciously, you can get a lot better. So as you think about whatever it is you're doing, how are you already doing it from multiple points of view? And how can you do it even better? So that's the fourth strategy of genius, which is multiple points of view and using multiple points of view. The fifth strategy of genius is using a continuous improvement loop. And anybody who's good at what they do, including you, has a very intuitively, natively built-in continuous improvement loop, meaning that you want to get better. You are trying to get better. And a continuous improvement loop is just so simple. It's like evaluating yourself after the end of whatever it is that you're doing and asking what went well, what didn't go well, and how can I get better? Now, people who are really good at what they do have very brilliant continuous improvement loops that are very effective. And on an upcoming episode, I'll do a deep dive into this, because if you can adopt a more genius continuous improvement loop, you can get better even faster. But just being conscious of having one and working to make it better is going to go a long way to help you get better results. And that's really what genius is. It's about focus over time, improvement over time. And the continuous improvement loop process is what allows that to happen. It's asking yourself, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? How could I do it better? What would be the next level of this? And how can I adopt it? One interesting thing about continuous improvement loops is that often when people are really good at having one, they rehearse doing it better the next time. So they say, okay, how can I do it better the next time? Then they kind of rehearse it so that the next time they do it, they've already rehearsed it a little bit in their mind. So that is the continuous improvement loop, which is the fifth strategy of genius. Those are the five main strategies of genius, meaning people are operating from high quality goals. They have mental checklists. They are using multiple senses, multiple points of view, and having a continuous improvement loop. And I hope by the time you've got to this point, you realize that you are already doing these things and you can take whatever it is you're good at to the next level just by consciously up leveling each one of those five things. So I hope this episode brought value to your life. Thank you, as always, for allowing me to share my greatest joy and passion with you, which is sharing how genius works and how you can get better. Subscribe to follow along and get notified when the next episode drops. I look forward to continuing our conversation about your genius on the next episode.